we had a blind patient last year who functioned very well as a blind person before his amputation. And even though automatically, the medical team would say he's not a prosthetic candidate, he can't see. How's he going to put it on? How's he going to monitor his skin? How's he going to know that everything's healing properly and that he's using it properly? But we saw as a team how already capable this patient was of living as a blind person, how intelligent this person was and able to integrate every recommendation that we made. And enough to say, we'll give him a chance. And this person succeeded tremendously. Even the doctors were stunned at how well this patient progressed. Because in the end, all we did was replace a limb. We didn't replace the person's aptitude or their capacities. He already had those. We just gave him a tool that allowed him to go back and live the life he had before. That's it. A prosthesis is a tool. What the patient does with it is up to them completely. But it's a tool we offer, and we offer training on how to use it. That's it. I'm not going to glorify it. Obviously, it's different for everybody. For a lot of them tend to be men. A lot of them tend to be men over 50. So a lot of them present in a way where I think they want to please you. They want to please us. They always say, I will do whatever you tell me. But at the same time, you see that they don't exactly follow the recommendations. And of course, they have the right to do whatever they choose. But I find there's that difference where they may say they want to work towards something, but then when you see them in action, they tend to not always follow the rules. Maybe not eat the right foods. They're sitting outside smoking. Their hygiene may not be the best. So the recommendations we make aren't always respected. And I think that's part of the clientele, part of the history of their own self-neglect. I'll give you an example of when I had a student a couple of years ago. And these are people who necessarily have not had the most, how shall we say, ethical way of life. They may live a lifestyle that I or somebody else may not approve of. And I had to make a point with the student is that we're not here to judge these people. If these people, no matter what they've done, no matter what their circumstances, if they come into this program and are willing to work with me and the other individuals towards what we have as a common goal, then I am in 100% with these patients. And these patients will do well, and they come and see me year after year, and we see their progress because the follow-up with the prosthetics department is for the rest of their lives. And I get to see the difference that we can make in these people and how much they appreciate. I think a sense of humor is key because they've made a decision in their lives to get to the point where they are. I don't feel sorry for them. I don't feel that they're lost causes. I feel that every moment they have a choice, and if it's for the better, they can turn their lives and their health around completely. So I don't feel there's a downside. I enjoy it, but I'm a personality, I think, that can handle this clientele, and I'm okay with it. I don't find I pay the price. I keep my sense of humor, though. I find the ones, first of all, their cognition is 100%. The ones who have no cognitive deficits already are starting off much, much better. And the ones who already were pretty autonomous in their living before, who strive to be independent, want to remain independent. Whereas the ones who are already dependent on their families, limited in terms of their physical capacities before, maybe their home is not accessible, they were not doing their own groceries or cooking, ordering out before a lot, they may be more limited in their success because they're not used to taking themselves in hand. I find the ones that are a post-trauma, I find there's more of they need more psychological support because it's an accident. They were not prepared for it. It's a shock to them. Where somebody who's diabetic may have been living with a wound and limited disability for a long time. These people might have been in 100% health until one moment something happens and it changes it. So I think for them, the psychological aspect is much, much more important. I think the physical approach is the same. We're still going to apply the same principles of range of motion, strength, balance, dealing with pain. All that's the same. I think what changes is our verbal and personal approach with the patient, because you may have to be more willing to listen to a patient who's had a trauma, because their grieving process is going to be much different than a patient who's more vascular or diabetic. So I think it's more how maybe we approach them with a little bit more, not that we're more compassionate, but more willing to listen and to ask questions to help them in the process of accepting their amputation. I find what's sad about these cases too is it tends to be a cancer that's aggressive. It tends to be a bone cancer that's metastasized. I find it's very difficult for these patients. The motivation is difficult, not for them, but for us, because we know that the prognosis is not good. They know the prognosis is not good. So I question, depending on the client, if it's somebody young and the process is going to be fast and they get to go home, that's great. But if we're keeping them in a hospital when they have a short quality of time left in their lives, I question, are we doing them a favor by keeping them in the hospital when maybe they should be home enjoying their last months with family? I find pain is the big obstacle. I find it's the biggest obstacle. Phantom pain, pain in the residual limb itself. I find that's the primary thing. If everything there is physically, even if cognition is not great, physically, they've been walking their whole lives, it's not hard to resume walking. What really limits them, I find, is pain. Specifically, what I find lately, and I find it really disappointing, is when patients arrive here from acute care and they're wearing diapers. And they're not necessarily wearing diapers because they're incontinent. They're wearing diapers because in acute care, nobody took the time to take them to the bathroom. Nobody took the time to answer a call bell. And if a patient had to wait 15 minutes or half an hour, it was easier to just leave them in a diaper. So there's things to be done. Wounds can be managed, but there's a lot of people who just don't have the information. We had a patient who let a dog lick his wound because he thought that was healing. I think it's the understanding that they've lost the limb, but they haven't lost who they are. I find it's important that to see that they're still a whole person even though they've lost the limb. It's the approach for them to, I think it's important that they mourn the loss, but to know that it hasn't changed who they are spiritually, holistically. You're still the same person you were before. But they have to go through that grieving process to come out on the other side. But I find that's key, is that we're not our bodies. We use our bodies to be able to live our lives, but we're not our bodies. I find it depends on the individual. I don't find this one way for everybody. I find it's very different. If it was somebody who was difficult to live with before, they're still difficult to live with now. If it's somebody who family was important before, it's just as important. We have patients who come here and they're the primary caregiver of their spouse or other family member. So their motivation may be, get me out of here as soon as possible, functional. I have to go take care of my wife. It's so different for each individual patient how it's the person. It's not the condition, I find. It's the person that's unique in everybody. You know, again, I can't draw a line between men and women as much as I would draw a line towards personality. If it's somebody who's stubborn, doesn't want to change, wants to go back to the way they were, they can stay stubborn. I don't find it's a woman issue or a man issue. Again, maybe women as a personality are less confrontational or willing to have a discussion and understand what we're saying and recommending, versus men who might be a little bit more direct and willing to say, I'm not going to change. But there's women who are that way too. I find it's more personality than gender. I know it. They tell me things that I know no other health professional told them. And I know it's other patients. They share information. They share the wrong information. They generalize the information that a patient has to apply it to others when it doesn't apply, because each patient is different. So I find a real source of information is other patients, which is unfortunate. I think examples are not to trust, to question the judgment of nurses, of doctors, of therapists. How, when they advise other patients, how they should be, how they should approach us, who to trust, the recommendations that we make that they don't think are important, and they generalize why they think it's not important. If they don't do certain things, they'll get kicked out. If they do certain things, they'll get kicked out. Just general information, misinformation that they spread from one to the other. Maybe in terms of how to manage their conditions, how to manage their blood sugar. It could be anything. Where to eat, what to smoke, what not to smoke. I think they discuss everything. And some patients may be more vulnerable and passive and listen to this information, whereas other patients know the difference between right and wrong anyway. But it's out there. Definitely there's misinformation between each other. I think the important issues for me, like I said, are certain ethical issues, that we take the liberty of making decisions for patients based on our expertise, but that the patient needs to be informed that they have rights elsewhere. It's not just us who are the end deciding factor. We are a government that you can go to a clinic, see a physiatrist, get a prescription for a prosthesis, and not go through all of this process. Do they know that? Are they informed of that when they come here? I don't think patients are informed. I think as a government, what is great in this province is that patients have access to facilities like this. I think this is a great facility because we have time to spend with this type of clientele in a multidisciplinary approach. Access to prosthetists, to prosthetic equipment. I find that's excellent. What I find is lacking is the follow-up when the readaptation is finished. That's where I find we're lacking. But the resources we offer, I think, are great. Again, it's there for the patient if they want it.